Hey, everybody, it's Richard Harris and Scott Leese here with you just a few weeks shy of our November surf and sales event in Costa Rica. We have one coming up semi-early 2022, so stay tuned. Excited to speak to our friend Daniel Murray, who's the marketing ops at Service Titan, as well as host of the Marketing Millennials podcast. Before we jump in, quick shout out to our sponsors of Salesforce, Salesforce for Sales, Vidyard. Who am I missing, Scott? Reggie and Outreach.
Outreach.io, Reggie.ai.
Yeah, I've been butchering it lately. So, but exciting things going on with all of our sponsors, and we've actually got some exciting events where they're going to be part of some of our live sessions. So, stay tuned for those. Daniel, I guess the first question: Daniel or Dan?
No, that's actually a funny question because that's the first question I get from everybody. And I always get the same answer is like, whatever you prefer, just not Danny.
Just not, there you go.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's my answer too. Do you like Richard, Rich, Rick? You know, and as a kid, Scott knows this. I went by Ricky, but very few people call me that. Even Scott tries, but it just doesn't
I
work.
usually only say that to you if I'm pissed off at you, I think.
Right.
Like my go-to. Yeah.
Right. Just like my dad. So that's a whole other episode. So Dan, talk to us about a little bit about your background, like marketing ops. You know, we don't typically do a lot of marketing people, not for any hesitancy. It's just not sort of the world we always swim in. So give some people some background of what you've been doing in marketing ops. What does marketing ops mean in November 2021? Because I bet it shifted just like everything else in the last 18 months. So fill us in.
Yeah. So I run marketing ops, which actually I think has close alignment with sales because like I have to be like the middle person and like the Switzerland between like marketing and sales and that like unbiased third party giving answers to both sides. But what I do is I run all marketing ops at Service Titan, and what that means is I'm the strategic advisor to the marketing team. So in two different ways, which is insights, which is like reporting, dashboarding, giving key insights on how the business is trending or how channels are trending. And then the other side of it is process. So tech stack, buyer journey, and all that good stuff. Like, so process mapping, seeing like what things should integrate with each other, how a buyer goes through our different funnels. So run all that process at Service Titan, but it has changed a lot. Like over the last, I would say like 5 years, like marketing ops has gone from like the support role to like a very big strategic advisor because of data being crazy everywhere, like all this text, all technology growing. Like you see like those charts where it was like MarTech was at like 1,000, now it's at like 10,000 different tools. So like you need someone who can like help piece the puzzle together for you and has like a bird's eye view that's unbiased for that department.
I want to dig into some of that, but I'd like to back up a little bit. Like, what's a little bit of your origin story? Like, how did you get a degree in marketing? Did you sort of fall into it? You know, sales is a little different where a lot of salespeople never chose to be salespeople. I'm the exception to that. I chose it, but how did you even decide that marketing is where you wanted to spend your time?
I grew up and my mom was an entrepreneur and she owned a couple of businesses, and I was from South Africa, and she really had like the creative brain. So I would go to work with her and see that that's what she was good at. And I realized like quickly that I wasn't good at sales, and I knew like I was kind of the introvert. Like I knew didn't want to go because all like roles out of college are like easy to get roles, are like BDR roles or SDR roles, but it's really hard actually to get like a marketing job out of college. But in college, I was an entrepreneurship major because I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't know like some of my family's in finance, some of my family's in sales, some of my family's this. And I realized quickly, like I have like the same brain as my mom, and I like the creativity. I like a little bit of the math side of it, but I like the unstructured side of marketing where like you don't have to, there's no like one way to do marketing, where like finance, there's like a formula, you plug it in, like it is, you could be a little creative, but like that's how I got into it. Is like I come from like a really entrepreneurial background, and marketing was like always something that I inherited from my mom because I saw her doing it. So it kind of but in marketing operations, I fell into that because like I was looking for my first job out of college, and I was like, oh, there's a marketing, what is this like Pardot role? And I was like, oh, it'd be cool to learn the system. And I got into it and I kind of fell into it.
Have you always liked numbers, it sounds like?
I was good at them. I didn't really know how much numbers marketing would have until I got into marketing. But now I think like see the importance of numbers. And I think like the problem in colleges right now is like, they don't tell you like why you're learning numbers, and it's like what is the end output. But like once you start getting into marketing, you understand like you need these inputs to get this output. Like you need to certain things to happen, certain levers to happen, and that's sales too. You need like certain amount of things to happen to get X. Obviously there's like the psychology side of it, which you can like, but why I like marketing, it's like not only based on numbers, like there's also the human element that changes a lot of everything in marketing, where also in sales, that's the same thing. Like people could say like, you make X amount of dials, you get X amount of book meetings and X amount of this, but they don't say like the quality and the personalization and stuff like that. So.
Gotcha.
So how early in the life cycle of a company would you advise people to hire and staff for a marketing ops position?
I think this is probably the second hire in the company and the marketing the org. I think like the first hire.
Second hire in the marketing department, you mean?
Yeah, in the marketing department. Or it either could be the first. Like I think but the problem is I weary people of saying that because some marketing ops people are very technology focused and come from like that support background, but they are the marketing ops people that I think are like the future marketing ops people that are very strategic advisors that know the whole business and know like what happens. But I think like the first hire should be a marketing generalist that knows everything that goes into marketing. And then you need that second person who knows data and stuff. It could be the one or two first marketing hires, I think, that you hire in your business.
And you were mentioning before that it's kind of hard to just break into marketing and get your first gig. Let's say somebody is looking to hire a marketing ops person. It's the second person in the marketing department. Where do I find them? If you're advising me, where do I go find this person today? And what are the specific skill sets or experience that I'm looking for so I don't strike out and hire the wrong person?
Yeah, I think knowing the right like marketing ops people, like networking with marketing ops people is where you find the best marketing ops people. Because I think marketing ops is a very big community. Like there's like those Marketo communities and stuff like that. Like I know a bunch of marketing ops people, like, so it's like knowing marketing ops because it's a tight community, but it's also a very like scarce role. Like there's not many people in marketing ops and there's a lot of marketing ops roles open. So it's finding those people, but it's also like looking at like having those connections and then asking, like, it's kind of like word of mouth where like you say like, oh, this person, I know this person's connected to this person, like, should I hire this person or not? And for like qualities, I think there's a mixture of qualities. I think you need someone who understands marketing as a whole. Like you need someone, and this is the key part, like everybody looks for marketing ops person to be like this person who understands tech stack, this person who understands like numbers. But if they don't have the marketing acumen, like they don't have those two pieces to connect the puzzle. Like they just will be giving you good advice on like how to connect things through systems and stuff like that. But if you have a good marketing acumen and someone who understands marketing and understands demand gen and understands brand and understands at least like at a high level, they can give you strategic advice because they know numbers, they know process, and now they can connect the dots and of how your marketing is working. So I think you have to really drill down in the marketing side of them, not only the tech stack side, because tech stack is easy to learn. Process is a little bit harder to learn. And then like general marketing takes time and experience to learn. So they need that marketing experience as well to be good in a marketing ops role.
Scott, we could take everything he just said and put sales ops in for marketing ops, and it would almost be aligned.
It feels interchangeable to me as well. I don't know if Daniel agrees or not.
It's very interchangeable. Like if you get a sales up person that doesn't know anything about sales, they're just going to give you advice on systems, like, or they just give you advice on like best practice process. But if they've been like the best marketing ops people, sales ops people I've seen have been an SDR.
Totally agree with that.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, do you have a stance on who is better suited to kind of move into a RevOps, head of RevOps? Is it the marketing ops person, the sales ops person, or does it not matter which department they come from?
I think, and as a marketing ops person, I'm going to say that it comes from the sales ops person, because I think the sales person's like the middle of everything. Market,
I'm surprised by this answer, Richard.
You know what? Dan seems young. Like he seems, there's this piece about at least younger than you and I. And I have this belief that there's a wisdom coming out of the younger generation that they get how it should be, whereas we always had to fight for how it's supposed to be. And so I agree. I'm surprised to hear it, but that's the reason I like about
the reason I say that is I think marketing ops people are going to be going down the path to be like the next CMOs and not the next head of CROs and like the next, because I think like they have the acumen to like know the whole business and connect the dots and work with like the head of RevOps or the CRO to talk numbers, but also talk the whole business. Where I think like the sales ops people I work with have like, they know onboarding, they know like customer success, and they know a little bit about, they know pipeline. They might not know like the top of the funnel of like every channel that comes in, but they know like what a funnel should look like. So every sales ops people I think are like the best rev ops people. I think that like marketing ops actually for me will be like the next CMOs or like leaders in marketing. I don't believe like, I think we think differently than sales ops, like, because we have to think a little bit more creative.
Would you ever consider going into a sales ops role for a year or two to understand that world? Because I'd be curious, because I'd just be curious to see like if there's someone out there that's that kind of unicorn that has done both.
I would 100%,
which would be ideal for a revenue ops person.
Yeah, I think I would 100% go to sales op, but the reason for me to go to sales op is because I think I want to, for a marketing person, it's so important to understand like the whole buyer journey and like things like what salespeople actually go through and like the process of sales and stuff like that. And I think not enough marketing people do that. Like they go and understand and talk to the salespeople and actually understand the payments.
I agree. I think it's getting better that marketing wants to hear what's happening on the street in these conversations, right? So all the tools that are out there to help sales, like they can now snippet out a part of the conversation to marketing or engineering or product engineering and stuff like that, so that people can have that access. But I agree, it would be beautiful. And what I meant to say was that someone who's done both could be an amazing CRO. Do you think a CRO needs to have been in an ops role at any point? Or I don't know what your exposure is to CROs at this stage. Maybe you don't have enough.
I think they, like what we talked about at the beginning, I think they needed to be a salesperson that was good, that ended up going into operations, then became, I think they need both. Like, because I think like I've seen CROs that are so like sales minded that they just don't know how to look at numbers and data and like budgeting and stuff like that. So I think you need some operational minded. It doesn't mean like they have to be in the role, but they should deeply have worked with operations and understand operations instead of just being like knowing sales 100%. Because I think, but also I think like the best salespeople are like operationally minded too. Like they understand process, they understand like systems, and I even think the best like VP of sales are like that too. Like the ones that I've worked with, like deeply understand process and systems and data,
So
as well as the human side of it.
Someone should write a book about following the process.
I didn't write it about marketing ops though, Richard.
Right.
You mentioned like the VPs of sales that you work with. What are your do's and don'ts in terms of advice for a VP of sales and how to interact with the marketing ops person and vice versa, flow in the other direction?
I think the big don't that I see a lot is like playing the blame game on each other. Like a lot of people play the blame game, like, oh, they didn't create enough pipeline so we can close, or they didn't close enough. But I think like the best ones I've seen are like the best friends. That's like, I think the best advice I have is like you need to sit down and agree on the goals you have with each other, make the plan together, make like, so you agree upon things together, so everything is like working towards a common goal. Like the best teams I see is like if like sales are down, like marketing feels terrible, and if like pipelines down, sales like feels terrible. With like they have like this like empathy for each other, where like the ones I see that aren't, like they didn't agree upon a number, they play the blame game, like they didn't create enough pipeline, that's why we're not closing up. Oh, they didn't create enough sales. Oh, like this is like, if you agree upon like what a quality lead is, what a quality op is, what a quality, like what is ICP, like what number do we actually believe we're going to hit, then it becomes like this, like you just working together, and the machine works better when there's like the top and bottom are working together. Where like I think it breaks when like there's a disconnect on like what qualified is to one side and what the number should be for the other side. So like
I've been in those conversations before, Richard, and
yes,
and they're not very fun.
No. So it's, like I'm sitting here, it's like the Romeo and Juliet, right? Like, people want them to work together, or you want them to be married.
You want it to work out.
Yes, but it doesn't, right? They end up killing each other. They end up committing joint suicide. So, what I want to, you mentioned earlier, right before we joined, that, you grew up in South Africa. So I'm curious, what brought you to the States? And I'm also curious about, and again, I don't know what age you came here, what you think the differences are about business in these two countries.
Yeah, that's a great question. Like, so I came young from South Africa. I left in like at the age of 7, but my mom had a business there, and she decided that like we were safer and would have more of a path of growth in the United States, because like you kind of have a choice to do whatever you want here, and she wanted to give us like that freedom to do that, because she saw like how like the country was changing over there. So which is funny, because like South Africa, like just talking to South Africans about like business there, like it's very like they think like they really think that marketing doesn't work in South Africa, even though like they call like Coke like and stuff like that, they think it doesn't work, but it does work on them.
What do they call it? Say that again.
Like it's like they will say like a Coca-Cola, like, and like the things, but it's a cold drink there, but they call like, they'll be like, could I have a Coca-Cola? Like they only think of like Coke products, like, but they think like brand marketing doesn't work on them, but it's like Coke products. You're like talking about a brand, and there's brand everywhere. Like I'll go to McDonald's and stuff like that. They're very big a brand, but like they believe like out of most countries, like my mom's business was built like hugely on like relationship building more than businesses here are built on that, but like they use more marketing. But like in South Africa,
They,
it's like
they have a more
highly,
long-term lens,
yeah,
a more long-term view. Like they're not looking for crazy like growth straight away.
yeah,
Like,
exactly. Like it's more like long-term relationship building, like build it, like going to think like when my mom built her businesses was like building it through like meeting people, like going to events with them, going to like building like it was like a very community, like people work together. Like I think like everybody had a common goal, like that there was success spread out, like at least in my mom's business, what I saw, like from what I see from and from South Africans that I talk in marketing that I've talked to, they say like it's hard to like they if they got marketing, they probably would explode a little like their like businesses more there because like they're kind of behind in like other countries of like all the marketing technology out there and Facebook ads and stuff like that. Like some companies get it. But you don't see many like smaller companies like growing there because it's so long-term growth like that people build their companies on from like scratch, like they build it through relationship building, and those companies have like the brand of like trust long term. So
you've
um
you've done a good job building relationships in a brand on multiple platforms. I don't know if you know this, Richard, but in addition to Daniel's LinkedIn presence, he's got a truckload of followers on Twitter as well. He's super active there. How do you view the purpose of each of those channels, and which one has been more productive, for you, and why?
that's a they both play different roles in my I think Twitter to me is more of the community vibes. Like I feel like I'm in a marketing community in Twitter and I know who the marketers are and I know who to chat with and I know who to drop into the conversations with and like have conversation. Is like they call it like marketing Twitter. Like I never heard like LinkedIn, like marketing LinkedIn. Like I've never heard of like that term. Like I know who the marketers are, but there's no like I feel like LinkedIn is not a community vibe, but LinkedIn is very good at like building your presence and building your personal brand and showing like who you are and showing like your social proof of like what you've done in your career and your knowledge base. But I think it's less of a community in LinkedIn, and Twitter is a community. That's why I like Twitter, because I also learn a lot from a lot of people. So like Twitter is like my learning platform, and then like LinkedIn's kind of like this personal branding, long-term play, like people being out in the market, like people understanding who I am. Like it's more of like this, like a different vibe for me where I just put out things and let people find me kind of marketing. Where Twitter is like I'm deep in the community there.
Yeah. Do you find that marketing people, do marketing people give out their advice more on Twitter than LinkedIn? Because that's what Scott and I do. And a lot of, if you think about some of the people who are on there, we're always talking about some best practice or, some insight. Scott's gotten better at doing Twitter. He sort of likes to test some things in Twitter before he puts it out on LinkedIn. But it feels, at least from my perspective, it's harder to make the connection on LinkedIn on Twitter on sales. But how do you see, is it just the marketers, they don't have the time like salespeople will put into LinkedIn, so Twitter's easier and faster?
Yeah, I also think like, yeah, I like Twitter's like snippets, like quick. And it's easy to, I think it's also easy to reach who you want to like your community there, because it's like they see each other talking. Like and LinkedIn, I like the algorithm's so bad that I can't even see like marketers posts half the time. Like the people I want to see who's posting, I can't see like the posts half their time. So it's like it would take me forever to scroll around, where I have to like when I first started LinkedIn, like I had like 20 bookmark people that I had to go look at their profile every day to make sure I saw like their content, like and engage with their content and stuff like that. So I think, but what I do like about LinkedIn is you can get depth to content. But now Twitter, like the good people on Twitter are making threads. So like the threads are like snippets of quick advice that I think are very digestible and cool and good like that. But I also do see like good content on LinkedIn, but I think like out of most, at least like in Twitter, I think it's more like people are more like critical on that platform, where like LinkedIn's a little bit of like an echo chamber sometimes. Like there'll be one or two people disagreeing with your thing, but sometimes I'm like people are just like, yay, cool, I love that.
Please come in and
Like,
disagree with our stuff. Scott and I love that. Scott likes to Scott, as much as he hates getting them, he does like the nasty grams, as he says, right? He likes to cause a little controversy.
I just don't enjoy going back and forth and debating the way you do.
Yes.
well, I mean, at least Scott has built his brand on like, I think like he likes to have different views and stuff like that and have controversy, which is good to have a brand like that. Like I think the best brands stand for something. Like the people who aren't branding themselves very well aren't standing for something. And I think like Pete Blaha does this too. Like he's very controversial online, but like some people love his style and some people hate his style. Chris Walker has like a very like style where he is very controversial against a lot of things, but it works because he's going against the grain. I think going against the grain is important in marketing and marketing forever. It's like go against the grain, like stand for something. Like you can't make everybody on the platform love you. Like you're
do you take that philosophy and apply it at all towards the Millennial Marketing Podcast? Is that part of the aim of the work that you do there at all, to give voice to differing ideas and bring in people, who aren't just going to utter the same platitudes that everybody else will? Is that part of it?
The part of it is like getting people who actually give you actionable advice, like instead of these people who are just spitting out the same thing that everybody else is spitting out. So I try to find like people who I know have a different view on something, or have a thought, like actual something that someone can come to the podcast and take away something and they can apply it tomorrow in their business. Like I think best practices are always like, are at least in some functions, like they're best practices for a reason because everybody uses them, and now like they're kind of washed out. Like you need some like variant views there. Like
well, best practices work, like you said, until everybody's doing them, and now they're no longer best practices. So the best practice always has to evolve. It kind of has to be a living, breathing thing, don't you think?
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I, even like in sales, like right now, I'm seeing like a shift in like sales, because like for BDRs and stuff, like 5 years ago, I would answer a BDR email, and now like everybody's doing the same thing, and I get tons more because there's more SaaS companies and all this stuff out there, that it's like not many people are breaking through the noise like very well. And like they need, and that's best practice, but they were taught like, okay, you need to send X amount of things in your sequence, and this is the email template, and everybody's still using that same thing. And marketers are doing that too.
I talked about this yesterday, Richard, where I posted about how it's not a good idea to schedule send all your emails for 8 o'clock on Monday morning. It's like, somebody taught everybody that. Somebody said, hey, don't send people messages on the weekend or on Friday afternoon or whatever. Send them all for 8 a.m. You'll get to the top of the inbox. The problem is, Daniel, me, you, we get 46 emails at 8 o'clock in the morning, and I'm like, fuck this, and I just nuke all of them.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm going to actually turn this around on Daniel and ask this question, because I mean, long time ago, there was a company, I think they're still around, Yesware. I don't know whatever happened to them. And they were certainly one of the originals of a sales loft outreach. And they did some amazing studies that talked about sending emails on Saturdays and Sundays, that you do send emails on Sunday nights because everybody's sitting in their office or at their home doing whatever it is, cleaning out their inbox for Monday morning, right? And they ran a bunch of data on it. I haven't seen any new data on that in the last few years, but I wonder if it still holds true, because you're also, while they're cleaning out their inbox, you're also getting a slightly more undivided attention. Right, they are focusing on what's in their email, so you're catching at that right mindset. But I am curious, Daniel, do you guys track this kind of stuff, whether it's marketing side or sales side, and what are you guys seeing as the best practices, knowing that a service titan client or prospect is going to be very different than, you know, Richard Harris trying to get to a VP of sales type person, right? There's some role stuff there. Have you guys done data on that?
I mean, for us, yeah, a little bit, because it's like we know like service titan clients, like especially early in the morning, like early in the morning, because they're going to go into jobs and they're going to go out to work. It's like, think of a plumber, like they're going to start their business, and the only time they get to check their email is like actually before work and after work.
So does that mean
early
like
in the
6
morning.
a.m.? Like,
Yeah, like
and by the way,
early,
we're not saying
early.
everybody start spamming at 6 a.m. But
No, I mean, like
yeah.
it's like we started shifting like our like SDRs and BDRs and stuff like early in the morning, because we noticed that like that's when they're like on the phones, and you have to shift early for East Coast too, because
Yep.
they're starting early too. So you have to like hit people at those different times, because like, you know, like once they start working, especially these smaller like plumbing shops, like they don't have time for that, and especially getting calls there, because they're very like relationship, like I'll pick up a call or a text message type of person, like, so
Right.
learning like that, those type of things. But just like seeing like their interactions of like them like, oh, like being more receptive early in the morning or like later at night when they have time to do things, where like a busy person wouldn't do that. Like for me as a mark, I like to reach me, like probably like early in the morning or later probably wouldn't work that well, because like I honestly don't want to check my email after like I'm done with work. But like maybe like reaching me out on like LinkedIn with like a good message, not like the crappy spammy ones. Like, you've read my content.
And savvy salesperson who's doing some research to understand their buyer and who they're trying to reach. If I'm trying to sell to Service Titan and Daniel is in my, cadence or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
I'm listening to the things that he says. I'm reading the things that he writes. I stumble upon a podcast episode like this, and he's like, listen, I don't want to check my email after 5. Hit me up on LinkedIn. Mornings work for me. I hear that and I'm like, I will do exactly what he just said to do. And that's how I'll get through. And if you pay attention to things that I say, like, don't email me at 8:00 on Monday morning, right? That's the way that you're supposed to operate. Am I wrong, Richard? It's personal, depending on the preferences and needs of the person you're trying to sell to.
I mean, you're making a good point too. Like, I think sales has turned into like the quality over quantity, like talk. Like, I think like it's talk
Definitely
like,
shifted.
Yeah, because like for me, like the people who actually have like engaged with my content, read my stuff, like had something, have more of a chance to getting on a meeting with me than someone who just sends me an email like out of the blue. Like, let me be honest, like everybody has like some personal interest that you've read their content, you've studied like what they do, like you shout out that they played football at University of Cincinnati, and I saw that you have a podcast, and I saw that I love the podcast episode about X where you said X, Y, and Z. Like, that shows that you actually took time to get to know me, and I'm a human being instead of a number in your sequence. Like,
I want to shift, because you've got an amazing podcast, right? Let's talk about it. It is called, make sure Marketing Millennials Podcast. So Scott and I are not allowed to go. Scott could probably sneak in just under the wire.
I think I could get a hall pass to that.
Right. So I'm way too old. Talk about, everybody for a while, everybody's been wanting to do a podcast, and I'm seeing more and more people doing them. What makes a successful one? Like, what are the things you can do aside from hopefully having good guests like you? What are the things people don't know about a podcast that they should know to grow from a demand gen growth perspective, that perspective?
How much like a personal brand, creating a personal brand matters when you're creating a podcast. I think people underestimate like that you have to do things on besides the podcast, otherwise nobody's going to find it.
Like what? Like, what do you mean?
Like I like the way why my podcast is growing is I built my personal brand first, and then I was able to get good guests because of that, because I built my personal brand, and then that allowed me to get more guests. And then when I built an organic channel of like the Marketing Millennials page on LinkedIn that grew to over 100,000 followers. So then like organically people are just seeing me in the Marketing Millennials in the feed. And I'm not talking about like Marketing Millennials. I'm not even showing my podcast half the time. And people are just like, it's popping up in their head like all the time. Like, oh, I see someone shared Marketing Millennials post. I shared like someone liked Marketing Millennials post. So I'm doing something organically on the side that it is nothing about my podcast. It's just everything about the brand. And the brand is what's carrying the podcast for more and more listeners. Because when I started growing my organic channel of the Marketing Millennials, of like, that's why there's people underestimate like social media is like, you grow like the organic channel, and people are doing this, like big podcasts are doing this on TikTok and stuff like that. Like you see like the controversial Dave Portnoy or stuff like that. He's posts on TikTok, it goes viral, and then more people go to the podcast. There's so many organic channels that you could build around and brand around. And I think people think less that there's a brand behind a podcast. It's not only a podcast. You have to create the feeling of what you're trying to have for the podcast.
We've been talking about that too, because the way I say is, your podcast is really an asset, right? Because it can turn into videograms and audiograms, the podcast itself, a blog post. Good ones can turn into ebooks, like they can turn into micro content for Twitter or LinkedIn. There's 1,000 things we could tweet out right now based on the things you said and the notes we're taking. So yeah, I agree with you. I think the part of that is the amount of time it takes to do that, right? Like you really need. Yeah. And I think you either got to enjoy geeking out on it late at night if you're building your own podcast, or you got to find someone to help do that.
Yeah. And I think the other piece that people are missing is like, you have to build, and you both do this well, is like build a community around your podcast. Like you need to build like something that's outside your podcast or inside, like it's a community, because community, I like, you see this in like you build a niche. Like the Marketing Millennials has become like a place for marketers to go to get simple marketing advice and actionable marketing advice that is quick, easy to digest. So like if you build like that feeling and community where that's a place where I can go to get X, Y, and Z, no matter if it's on your podcast or it's on your LinkedIn page or your Twitter page or your YouTube channel, like that's where I know to go do that. Like you think of your podcast less as a podcast, than you think of it as like a brand that I could do other stuff. And I think a lot of people just think of it as like a podcast. Like you need to think of it as like a brand,
more
a community,
extension of your brand.
Yes.
Exactly. It's not a podcast. The podcast is just a vehicle of delivering information.
It's just an asset creator.
Yeah. Yep.
There you go.
It's a distribution channel. That's all it is. And like, you can't think of it as anything else than that. Like you're just one piece of like the overall brand. Like Surf and Sales is one, like this podcast is one piece of what Surf and Sales actually is. Like, it's just part of the brand. It's not like, because as like salespeople, like not many people, maybe some people will listen to this podcast right now, but somebody who doesn't have the time will be on LinkedIn listening, or they don't have enough time. They want to get a snippet on Twitter on like the podcast, or they don't have enough time. They'll go on YouTube, and your audience is not only listening to podcasts, so you have to distribute on other channels. That's why a lot of podcasts don't win, because they just think of it as like a podcast, and it's a company, it's like an asset, like that I just use there. Like it's nothing else.
Scott, this is everything we've done wrong. We should talk to Daniel on episode 4.
We've done okay.
We've done okay. There's a lot of things.
Kudos to Richard for pushing me to do the podcast as an extension of the Surf and Sales events and summits and brands. So.
Well, cool. Hey, Daniel, thank you so much for joining us. A quick shout out to Vidyard, Salesforce for Sales, Outreach.ai and or Outreach.io and Reggie.ai for joining us and being our host, our guest Oh my God, I'm butchering stuff today between this and
Richard
my,
has been partying at SaaStr for
this is
like
not
48
true.
hours,
This is
which,
not true.
he's
All right,
deprived of
Scott,
sleep.
give a proper
Yeah.
shout out to our
Oh, this is
sponsors. That's
hilarious.
the word, right?
Yeah. Well, if you're looking to grow your SaaS business or any kind of business, you should probably check out Salesforce, Sales Cloud, Outreach, Vidyard, and Reggie. They're good friends and supporters of the Surf and Sales events and of ours personally, and great sponsors of the show. Daniel, appreciate you being here. What can we do for you? What questions do you have for us?
Yeah, I think one of the first questions I have is like, what would you tell like a marketer to build a better relationships with like a sales leader or sales AEs? Like, what would you tell marketers? How can we build the relationship and make it better for a better partnership?
I have two responses and reactions. The first one is internal, meaning the people that you work with. Spend time with them. If you're in office, this is like going back to 2019 and before, but like, go have lunch with them. Like, the best thing you could have done with me if you were working with me and I was the VP of sales would be to like, just be friendly with me. It's like, don't be intimidated. Go sit down, have lunch, have a chat, ask about the things that are blockers for me, so you understand where my frustrations are, and think to yourself, what might I be able to do or contribute to remove those kinds of things? And if you have that kind of servant approach with the sales leader or the sales reps, I think that goes a long way to building that bridge, right? And then make sure that the door is open for them to approach you and say the same thing. So that's kind of internal, is just put forth effort, spend time with them. External is, I think people need to get out and have more conversations and interactions and debates a little bit in this whole kind of arena. So the things that you do, for example, coming on a primarily sales focused podcast and having conversation, engaging with salespeople and sales leaders, content, networking with them. Think about bringing in sales or revenue leaders into a marketing podcast and finding commonalities and things to discuss there. And so, you're just building a larger kind of support system and network of people and resources to tap into if you do those things. Those are the things that are on my mind. Richard, what about you?
Yeah, I think agreed with everything Scott said. And I get super tactical where I think it's around case studies and use cases. You really want to, when you go talk to these reps, say, what kind of case studies do you need, right? And you look at it from several different angles. One is around the pain you solve, not just the story you tell about what you do, right? And I think that's the one place where marketing, I think, really gets sales when they do good case studies, because they recognize, oh, Scott was trying to solve this problem, right? So now they're painting this picture. And then somehow that gets a little lost in translation in other parts of marketing on the website or other places. So I'm all about the pain. So I think more case studies and use cases are always a key piece, because it encourages that dialogue Scott's talking about, right? And it's not only when you have that conversation, well, what could I do with it? How do I support them with that? And it's a case study, right? I think that's the first thing. I think the other thing is, some ride-alongs, right? Like, once you have a relationship with a rep, ask them if you can just come in and sit and just listen, not participate, just listen to what the customer's saying and how they're saying it. And then, do a debrief with them, with the salesperson. And then at some point, also talking to more customers. Like, that's the piece, like, and then comparing that. Hey, this is what our customer said. Is that what you heard? Like, when you actually spoke to them? So I think that's a big piece. I think the other side of it is, particularly on the marketing side, is spending time with customer success, because sometimes they're going to have the deeper story, right? And they're certainly going to have better access to, well, what happened after the sale, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months later, kind of stuff. So I think you're sort of looking at the whole revenue machine that way.
That's interesting. Because how many salespeople do you think actually like look at when they're making a sale, like how successful someone's going to be 9 months down the line, like in the product. Like,
I think everybody, if compensation is aligned in such a way that the customer's best interests are, you know, at the forefront of what everybody's doing. I think if it's not communicated to salespeople at all and they're not incentivized at all, you can create this kind of churn and burn customer type process where you just yank deals over the line, right?
So here's the thing. I was at SaaStr, I actually learned at least one thing from Mark Roberge, and he talked about, and HubSpot's different. He acknowledged it's a different cut because it's a seat license situation, but they would pay their reps more on the expansion than the deal, right? Because they were seeing that people were signing for 100 seats, then only using 70. So the renewal would come, but it would go down. So he'd rather pay the reps for 5. Let's get the 5, because these big companies all say, well, let me do 5 of them first. I want to test it. So pay them that, but then pay them more on the expansion. And so I think that's a really interesting place, as Scott was bringing it up on the compensation side. And if marketing understood that and it was agreed upon, there'd be an interesting dynamic occurring there. So
yeah, I think one thing that I got out of this is pretty good is like, the lineman is not only marketing and sales, you have to align also with like the upsell, like everything needs to be aligned because even like the marketing goals, like you can, whatever you say top of funnel to messaging is going to get translated to like what the sales rep has to say. And then like if you're saying like promising like 40% growth in the first year and they get 10% growth,
you've just made a mess for the customer service team. Yeah,
exactly. So it's like that false promises you make that the first touch could screw a whole relationship down the line. So that's pretty interesting. Yeah, those are my questions, but yeah, I just wanted to get your perspective on that.
Yeah. Well, thanks again for joining us on the show, Daniel. Let us know if we can ever be helpful to you. Good luck with the podcast and good luck to Service Titan as you guys continue to grow.
Cool. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, Daniel. Appreciate it.
Nice meeting you both in person. Finally, this has been awesome.
Likewise.